So we're just waiting for him to be in the same room with us. Okay, he's coming. So Dr. Bruce Webb, I've known him for nearly 20 years. And when I met him, he had recently completed his degree in optometry. And then he went on to study medicine. And he has worked all over the world. In South Africa, New Zealand, I know he's also working as a ship doctor at one point. And then in Ireland and England, Australia. He's back in South Africa. And he has a lot of experience. He has a passion for lifestyle medicine. So this is a different approach to healing than what most of us know. So this doctor, he will help you to see. Remember, he did optometry. He will help you to see your body in a different way. And I believe he's going to help us to make changes that will ultimately have long-term benefits. So, Dr. Bruce Webb, welcome here to Westville, and we are looking forward to your presentation this evening. Thank you. Let's give him a hand.
Good evening, everyone. I was busy having some cauliflower, and they said it's my time, so I'm sorry for the delay. I'm really excited to be with you guys this evening. I've had the privilege of being exposed to some really powerful information these last few years. And it's a real honor for me to get to be able to share that with you. You know, I believe that good things are to be shared. And so this effort, what we're doing here is an attempt to share something good and to help others. And perhaps I won't bore you with too many details about my journey, but I'll just tell you briefly. As Kim said, I had the privilege of studying medicine in Cape Town. I finished in 2003 after my first degree. And I'm very, very grateful for that opportunity. And I learned such a lot, and it was something I will never regret. But unfortunately, traditional medical training has one flaw. And that flaw is that we learn a lot about disease. We learn a lot about illness. We learn a lot about diagnosis. But we don't learn much about wellness. And I'm sorry to say that, you know, and many of you are here because you'll agree with me, that managing disease and being well are not the same thing. And part of my frustration, why I've become passionate about this subject, is that I believe we were made to be well and not just not be sick. And we'll see as we go along some of the differences between those things. So let's get started. We're starting a little earlier than I anticipated, so hopefully we can get you home a little earlier tonight. I want to encourage you before I start that you've all had the flyers, you've seen the topics, and you'll see why I've chosen some of those topics as we go along. But I know that time commitments affect all of us, but I really want to encourage you to come to as many as you can, because a picture is going to emerge. Tonight we're going to look a little bit at respiratory health. We're going to look at some of the fundamental principles I'm trying to convey. But if you try and come to as many as possible, you'll probably get the full picture a whole lot better. So I really want to encourage you to come along. That's a nice picture, isn't it? Colors. Colors are good. So health and wellness program. Not a sickness program, a health and wellness program. What are the aims and objectives of bringing you all here tonight and for this program? To help us see that we are made to be comprehensively whole. We are made for more. If I can leave you with a hunger for more, then I'll be happy, because we were made for more. And that's my desire for you, that's my desire for me, that's why I'm doing this. To share insights into the machinery of the human frame, to give us a sense of wonder and awe and desire to bring it back into its best possible condition. Lofty goal, but I think it's a worthwhile one. To identify why we get sick and what we can do about it. I'm going to try and, excuse me. I've got a few little sayings that I want you to remember. To be well, to get well, to know what it means to be well, we need to understand what things make us sick. Isn't that true? It sounds intuitive once I've said it, but if we start to understand why the body gets unwell, how it gets out of balance, we'll have more information at our disposal as to how to be well. And the encouraging thing is that the body, when it breaks down, when we get sick, what we're finding, what science is finding, is that actually there are far fewer things that cause disease as common denominators than we would otherwise necessarily have previously thought. So when the body breaks down, it actually breaks down reproducibly. When you get sick, when you get an inflammatory condition like rheumatoid arthritis, which is an autoimmune condition, there are often reproducible antecedents of that condition. Now, there's many things we don't understand in terms of genetics and triggers and things, but it's encouraging to know that at the core of a lot of disease processes, there are similar things that if we can understand those and prevent those, we can prevent a knock-on effect that causes a whole host of diagnoses. So, to be well, we need to understand what makes us sick. Some things to think about. 20 to 30% of our lifespan is related to genetics. What does that tell you? The bulk of it isn't. Isn't that encouraging? You know, you go through medical training and you get taught that genetics is your destiny. Thanks, bud. Thanks very much. Thank you. You get taught that genetics are fixed and you can't change it, and that's your lot. But the good news is that that is not the case. Firstly, 70% is within our control related to our lifestyles. So our lifestyle is how we live, the choices you make and the choices that I make. And genetics and epigenetics. Does everybody know about genetics and epigenetics? Who hasn't heard of epigenetics? Okay, epigenetics. So basically, we have our genes sitting in our cells, and we have parts that actively code for proteins. That's the human genome. You know, the Human Genome Project was recently finished, so we encoded the full human DNA sequences. And then you have parts of the DNA that aren't actively involved in replicating proteins, but they fundamentally affect how the DNA works. And that's called an epigenetic influence on your genetics. So they don't code for the proteins you make, but epigenetic influences can affect how your DNA is replicating or not, whether it's on or off. And those epigenetic influences are affected by our lifestyles. So how we live has an impact on our genes. So my grandmother, if she went out every night and had steak and chips and dessert, she left an imprint of her lifestyle epigenetically on the stuff that the genetic material that I inherited. So, and that's powerful. That's scary and powerful, because that says that how you live is going to leave an imprint on your genes for your children. Now, once you've had children, you're not going to influence them anymore, but you're still going to influence your genes in terms of which genes are switched on and off. So that's powerful. We have control over our genes through a thing called the exposome. We call it the exposome. That's the total environmental influence that we bathe our genes in. But we won't bog you down with those details now. We'll get to that later. Estimated global healthcare service markets for 2015 is $3 trillion, one of the largest sectors of the world economy. So healthcare is pretty important. Unfortunately, it's disease care most of the time. Global pharmaceutical market is worth more than $300 billion per year. We live in a time when we are told that sickness is pill deficiencies. You know, if you have reflux, you're told that you have an omeprazole deficiency. If you have type 2 diabetes, you have a metformin deficiency. And that's not the case. It's clearly not the case. These are lifestyle diseases. Anybody heard of telomeres? Many of you will have heard of telomeres. So telomeres are the little caps at the end of your chromosomes. And those little caps are like the shoelaces on your shoes. So if you want to remember telomeres, just look at your shoes, and you say, I've got shoelaces, and the little caps that keep the shoelace together are the telomeres. And basically what happens, every time your DNA is replicated, those telomeres, they basically, the complex that allows your chromosome to be replicated doesn't go all the way to the end of the chromosome. And the telomere takes the hit, it doesn't get fully replicated with each subsequent cell division. So every time your cell divides and your chromosomes are replicated, the telomere is progressively shortening. And when things get to a critical length, that determines how long your cell can continue dividing. In other words, when that cell is going to ultimately die. So to increase your longevity, you want to keep your telomeres as long as possible. And there's an enzyme that does that. It actually helps to replicate or lengthen telomeres, and that's an enzyme called telomerase. So to at least at a cellular level, to control your longevity, you want to be doing things that prolong telomere length, or that accelerate or keep your telomeres as long as possible. Very interestingly enough, I found a study while I was just reading up on this again. Telomere shortness in human beings is a prognostic factor of aging, disease, and premature morbidity. So how long the ends of your shoelaces are. Comprehensive lifestyle intervention. They did a study, a 5-year study. Comprehensive lifestyle intervention was associated with increases in relative telomere length after 5 years of follow-up compared with controls. So they took 2 groups. They had research divides study populations into 2 groups often, a control group and a study group. And they did comprehensive lifestyle intervention changes with these people, with the study group, and they found that their telomeres increased in length at the 5-year mark. So how you live affects how rapidly you die, quite literally, at a telomere level. So health, the dream of the rich and the poor alike. What does health mean to you? Have you thought about it recently? Being free from injury or illness is one definition. When I worked in New Zealand, I stayed with a lovely couple, and they had this little saying for every day, and this one stuck in my mind: the important things in life are not things. Do you agree? I think the longer we live, the more we realize that, hey, the important things in life are not things. Without health, most other things are not that important. And I've said this before, and I'll say it again because it always has meaning for me. There's a saying that says, when we are young, we spend our health in search of wealth, so that when we are old, we can spend our wealth in search of health. Isn't that the truth, eh? And how many of us, one of the tragedies of the human condition, I believe, is that we find it so hard to learn from each other. Don't you think? We don't learn from the mistakes of other people very well. And if we really want to be smart, I think we need to start learning from other people, learning from their mistakes. If I think of my own life, how many mistakes of my father and his father that I've reproduced? It's not necessary. We start to be intelligent, make good choices. So I've moved, I was trained in traditional medicine, and I'm grateful for that, as I said. The problem with mainstream medicine is very good at many things, and I'm not here to make you lose confidence in your doctor at all. What I'm saying is, mainstream medicine is very good at acute medical care. If you have a major accident and you smash your knee up, no plant is going to heal your knee if you need a replacement. Not in that moment. If you have an anaphylactic reaction, that's a life-threatening allergic reaction, you need to go to an A&E and get adrenaline. So medicine is exceptionally good at many things, and we must give credit where credit's due. And so having practiced that kind of medicine, I can say it's exceptionally good at that. What it's not so good at is chronic medical care. It's very good. Internal medicine is actually my area of interest in terms of if I had to study something in mainstream medicine, I would do internal medicine. It makes the most sense academically. But I'm still concerned about the treatment regimens in mainstream medicine because we're often still not addressing root causes of pathophysiology. So a lot of mainstream medicine is reactive. You have a crisis, we react to it. You have pain, we give you Panado. We react to your crisis, and reaction is never the best way to deal with a problem. And I'm here tonight to tell you there's definitely a better way, and that's lifestyle change. And we get sick because of lifestyle problems. And we can't treat lifestyle pathology with pills. We must treat lifestyle pathology with lifestyle change. Does that not make sense? And I don't care about stating the obvious. I'll state the obvious the whole night if we can just get the message. We must treat lifestyle problems with lifestyle change. And I know humans are hard to change. They are. And that can be a problem. So you need to cooperate in your own care. And that's the beauty of health, is that, this organism that you've been given is such an amazing design, hey? When I study this stuff, I'm so humbled. I'm so humbled. To understand what's going on in the cell. We take it for granted. You're sitting with an amazing machine, and it's yours to take care of. And I'm passionate about that subject. How do we follow the rules? What are the rules of our constitution? How do we make it work? So wellness versus illness management. If people ask me what I did, I've been practicing emergency medicine for a number of years, and I finished that in December in Australia. And if people ask me what I do, I started to say, well, I'm a fireman. I put out fires. That's what I do. And I manage illness. I'm an illness manager. And I started getting frustrated because I knew there was more. I didn't go to medical school to manage illness, to, just lessen your pain. I believe we're made for more. So, what is health? What does it mean to be comprehensively well? And this is what I want you to get to think about tonight. I want you to think about your own health. That's the whole point here, is how well are you? What is wellness? How well am I? How's my wellness? It's not merely the absence of negative symptoms. It's not having just no pain, no cough, no ache. We think if we don't have a negative symptom, we're well. Is that wellness? Is that all you want? I don't want just that. I don't. And that's how we think. We think that, hey, I don't have a cough today, I'm well. Health is a positive vitality. It's a state of physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual well-being. Right, how are we doing then on that definition? And I'm talking to me. We're all on a journey. None of us has perfect health. We've got to try and make choices to improve these areas of our lives. So, physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual well-being. How are you doing on that scale of things? How well are you physically tonight? How well are you mentally? How well are you emotionally? And how well are you spiritually? So health is the presence of positives. It's not merely the absence of negatives. Please remember that. How many positives do you have? I believe we were made to jump out of bed in the morning and to be able to, run with a dog and throw your kid in the air and laugh and have fun. That's what we're made for. We're not made to just say, oh, my hip's not hurting today. I'm healthy. That's not health. So I want you to adopt the new definition, because then you can move towards the positives. So we look at intellectual health, emotional health, physical health, social health, spiritual health, occupational health, environmental health. And I unashamedly say tonight that for me the definition of health definitely includes spiritual well-being. We can't exclude that. We are composite beings. We are, I believe, we're complicated beings. We're made with several facets to our makeup. And I don't believe if you want to be comprehensively well, you can ignore your spiritual well-being. And I think it's very important. And I hope that many of you will start to see that and hopefully agree with me. So health is having energy, vitality, joy, peace, connection, meaning, living with purpose, loving, and being loved. You can have the healthiest set of organs. You can have a great liver, healthy kidneys, healthy brain. But if you live on your own and you hate people and you have no one to share your love and joy with, you're missing out. You're missing out. We are made for social interaction. We're made for loving and being loved. And if we are shutting ourselves off, I'm touching sensitive issues, I know. If we're not experiencing love, giving love and receiving love, we're not fully well. We're not fully human. We need that. And so we're made for more. I want to make you hungry tonight. I want to make you hungry for more because you're made for it. I love this saying, ASICS. Anima sana in corpore sano. Any Latin students in the room? You did Latin. I did Latin in Senate 6, but I wouldn't have done enough to know what that was. It was a long time ago. Do you know what ASICS means? You run with your ASICS shoes. What does it mean? This is a worthy goal. Next time you look at your ASICS shoes, you'll never look at them the same. And if you don't have ASICS shoes, you should get some, at least running shoes. It means sound mind in a sound body. A sound mind in a sound body. Now that's health. You want a sound mind in a sound body. And hey, that's what I want for myself. That's what I want for my patients. I want a sound mind in a sound body. Because that's the human experience is dependent on a fully functioning brain. And every organ system is actually ultimately trying to support brain function. That's the purpose of it. It's no good having a great liver if your brain's out of balance. The liver's trying to support brain function ultimately. We're not our livers, we are our brains. So sound mind and a sound body, a worthwhile goal. That's where it all happens, particularly this area, the frontal lobe. Very important part of the brain. Frontal lobe, parietal lobe, temporal lobe, and occipital lobe, and cerebellum. This is what makes us different, or you different from your dog or your cat. How well your frontal lobe is functioning. Your dog doesn't sit and think, is this a moral action I'm about to do? He doesn't do that unless he's a really smart dog. No, he doesn't. He doesn't have this capacity here. So, your sense of well-being, your sense of enjoyment in life is often going to be dependent on how well this area of your brain is working. Your ability to decide, to have judgment, insight, reason, conscience, are dependent on good functioning of your frontal lobe. And the processes we're going to look at, inflammation, nutritional deficiencies, hormonal imbalances, oxidative stress, these things fundamentally affect the well-being of your brain. And ultimately, as I said, that's who we are. We are our brains. If I stood here, hopefully some part of my frontal lobe is functioning tonight. If it wasn't, it would be gobbledygook. It wouldn't make much sense. So we need to keep this area functioning well. I like that picture. You've got to exercise. Use it or lose it, isn't it? Use it or lose it. So what does it take to be comprehensively well? If we start to fall asleep, I'm going to get you to stand up and do some exercise. You know that. Who knows burpees? We'll do some burpees if you fall asleep, all right? So what does it take? It takes a decision on my part. I can talk about health and well-being all I want to, but if I actually don't get off the chair and put down the ice cream and actually get on a bicycle or go for a run and decide what I'm going to put in my mouth, nothing's going to happen. So it takes commitment to the goal. This word here has really fascinated me the last few months, intentionality. I love that word because I think that's another word you need to remember, is to have success in any area of our lives. We need to live intentionally, don't you think? We need to decide what we want and set about what needs to happen to make it happen. So I can assure you tonight that if you leave wellness as a pipe dream and don't do anything about it, nothing will happen. It's one of those things that we have to become intentional about because we live in a world that actually counters our well-being. Do you agree? The diets that are put out there, the things that you buy, there's so much non-food out there, for instance. Just look at food, what you put in your mouth. I'm so grateful for the ladies that have done this work at the backyard. That's food. You eat that kind of stuff and you make that part of your lifestyle, you will feel a difference. I guarantee it. So, intentionality, healthy breathing, deep restorative sleep, optimal hydration, good oral health, a healthy and balanced gastrointestinal tract. We're going to talk about that tomorrow. And I really want to encourage you to come. Hippocrates said all disease begins in the gut, he said. A healthy hormonal system, a well-functioning detoxification system, a non-toxic state, the best nutritional input, an optimized metabolism, including euglycemia, which is your blood sugar control. We need to look at that. A healthy cardiovascular system. Exercise, body and mind, including musculoskeletal health, and healthy thinking and emotions. Quite a few things, but if the encouraging thing is, I say, there's only a finite number of things that really go wrong in the human body. And that's the really exciting part. The area of medicine I've become interested in now as a consequence of this journey is called functional medicine. Has anybody heard of functional medicine? So functional medicine basically saying, what are the underlying systems that are affecting my health? Which systems have become unbalanced? Why have they become unbalanced? And how do I get them back in balance? And I want to tell you tonight that if, as I said, there's only several core systems that really get out of kilter when you become unwell. And if you want to be well, you want those systems to be in balance. The first thing, this is an important slide. If you want to be well, you need to heal the lifestyle. Obey the laws of our constitution. Okay? How are we doing for time? We're all right. If you get a new car, what's a popular car? What car do you like? Get a fancy car. Say you get a Jaguar. And you decide, well, today I'm going to put water in my Jaguar. And it's an age-old cliched analogy. That car is designed to run on certain principles. And it's the same with our bodies. We are made like, if I take my phone and throw it up in the air, it comes down because of gravity. I can say I hate gravity, I don't believe in gravity, but it's going to keep coming down, isn't it? And it's the same with our bodies. Your body and my body is made to run on certain physiological principles. So if you want to be well, you need to study the design principles and need to follow those design principles. And I know I'm stating the obvious, but stating the obvious is important because we can't assume things. We must have the basic laws in mind and follow those things. So I want to challenge you tonight. Are there any laws of your constitution that you're breaking? Do you know what the laws of your constitution are? Do you know what makes for health in your system? We need to identify and treat any chronic infections or immune activation. I'm not going to go too much into that at the moment because I don't want to confuse you too much. But certainly it appears that there's certain types of bacteria and bugs that can persist in the human organism. Things like chlamydia, mycoplasma, Borrelia, which is Lyme disease, some of the others, EBV, Epstein-Barr virus. So this is a framework I've started developing through my reading to try and help people as much as possible. If you're sitting with a bug somewhere in your system that your immune system's not clearing, that can be a potential reason for less than optimal wellness. I will leave it at that. We might touch on it a bit later. Identifying SNPs and optimizing. Who knows what SNPs are? Now, this is really quite scientific stuff I'm sharing, but I will elaborate as we go along. The most important thing I want you to remember tonight is the healing the lifestyle. That is something we can readily do. Knowing the laws that keep us healthy and making sure that we're following those. It's no good trying to do all sophisticated scientific testing and getting really clever if we're breaking the most basic rules. Okay. This identifying SNPs and optimize, I'll get back to that, but there's a process called methylation, which is happening in each of our bodies like 1 billion times a second. You want to maximize your methylation, but I'll get back to that. All right? You want to master your metabolism. You need a metabolism that's running like a Ferrari, not like a Foxy, if you want to be well. Okay, and that requires looking at your hormones, your inflammatory status, and your mitochondria. Everybody know what mitochondria are? So mitochondria are the organelles that actually provide the energy source for your cells. They make ATP. And your mitochondria are taking massive amounts of hits these days through oxidative stress. And we need to look at ways to keep our mitochondria healthy and happy. We need to detoxify, remove the barriers to healing. Toxins mess with our physiology. We need to ask, are there significant endogenous and exogenous toxins affecting my health? So endogenous toxins are toxins that your body makes itself through metabolic processes like digestion. And exogenous toxins are toxins from outside that we take in, things like in our water, pesticides in food. Those are exogenous toxins. Toxins mess with the adequate function of your physiology. We need to prioritize and optimize restorative sleep. Your sleep, remember this, your sleep is a barometer of health. It's one of the barometers of health. Sleeping is not a sleeping pill. Sleeping disorders are not sleeping pill deficiencies. They're not. If you're not sleeping and sleeping restfully, there's a reason. And you need to try and address the reason. So they're not Valium deficiencies. They're not diazepam deficiencies. They're not Stilnox deficiencies. They're not any of those pill deficiencies. Sleep is a barometer. If you're not getting good, restful sleep and you're waking tired, you need to say, what's up? What's happening? And we'll talk about that, so keep coming. Then exercise. Exercise is nothing other than conditioning the body. You know, one of the things I would do differently if I had my studies all over again is I would get out and exercise more. I sat with my nose in a book. You know, people I lived with that know me well. I sat with my nose in a book and I just read. And I was stressed and I had exams and, it was not good. And I lost the balance. And I would do that very differently. If you want to keep a healthy, balanced brain, you want to get proportionate physical exertion in proportion to your mental exertion. So, and exercise involves conditioning your body. So you want to be musculoskeletally well. You know, I've spent a lot of time reading and researching hormones and chemistry and stuff like that, which is fascinating. But I've often neglected musculoskeletal wellness, I have to be honest. You need to be strong physically, and you need to keep your bones strong. You need to get your posture right. Many of us start looking like a question mark. Our pelvis goes the wrong direction, and we got perhaps good blood for a while, but we look like this funny posture, we like sit by a desk like this. So, musculoskeletal health. Don't forget musculoskeletal health. You want to strengthen your musculoskeletal system. Nutrition. You want to eat a whole food. We're going to get to that. That's the big topic. A whole food, low GL, anti-inflammatory, antioxidant-rich, fiber-dense, plant-based diet. Individualized supplement needs based on, we'll get to that. Oral and gastrointestinal health, we've said. Immune inflammatory health, hormonal health, neurotransmitter health, and live a life of meaning and connectedness. Find out why you are here and live that. That's health. That's what I've kind of got to in my studies. That's the framework I'm trying to approach patient problems with, using a functional mindset. Because these are the things that reproducibly go wrong. That's why I'm saying those things. So if you're not well, start asking questions in this domain. This is where the answers are going to be found, I believe. You still with me? Looks like you're glazing over. You need some burpees. Okay. All right. How about you? Do you feel that you're getting the best out of your life in all of its facets? These are personal questions. And I'm asking myself, and I challenge myself. I'm not here as the shining example. I'm here as one who wants it just as much as you do. And I'm working towards these things. Have you recently assessed your total health, including its physical, mental, social, and spiritual aspects? Are you neglecting any of those aspects of health? Are you enjoying a real quality of life? Is it possible that life may have much more to it than you're currently experiencing? Important questions, eh? Important questions. How's your emotional health? How's your mental health? How's your relational health? How's your physical health? Where are you? Where am I? And I'm asking myself these questions, and I'm happy to take it on the chin where I need to, I am. If you want to improve, you need to take it on the chin sometimes. Yes, you can. If you're brave enough, you can. I love this picture. I thought I had included somehow. It's great. I don't know if that was photoshopped or not, but I think his expression is priceless there. So to know how to be well, as I said, we need to understand why we get sick. We stress too much, we sleep too little, we eat the wrong foods, or rather non-foods. Actually, you've got to say, is this actually food? That's your first question. Is it actually food? And food, by definition, meets certain criteria, and we'll look at that later on. We drink the wrong things, we don't exercise or condition the body, we are inflamed, hormonally deranged, toxic, neurotic, oxidized, nutrient depleted. We burn up, swell up, dry out, and turn to stone. And we have toxic relationships. These are some of the reasons we get sick. And we need to own up to them. And this is a powerful statement I learned when I was working in the Integrated Medical Center in Johannesburg. We burn up, we get inflamed, we swell up, we get edematous, we get our fluids moving into the wrong compartments in the body, We dry out, we don't have water where it needs to be, and we turn to stone, we calcify. So that's what's happening to a lot of us as we age. Calcification, we're going to look at a bit of that in cardiovascular health. We're getting calcium sitting in the wrong parts of the body compartments. Calcium is designed to sit where? In the bones. The bones is the reservoir for calcium in the body. That's what it's designed to do. It's designed to be a reservoir that the body uses hormones like parathyroid hormone and calcitonin to regulate your blood calcium level based on the bone reservoir. So it's there's a dynamic control happening between your bones and your blood. But what's happening is because of certain micronutrient deficiencies, and one of them we're going to talk about is vitamin K2. It's a very important nutrient. We're getting calcium sitting in the wrong parts. It doesn't get to the bones. We need to get enough nutrients to get calcium to the right places. So those are some of the reasons we get sick. And these are the 8 core areas of dysfunction that often happen. We get gut dysfunction, we get nutrient imbalances, we get HPA axis dysregulation, that's hormonal system, toxic burden, chronic infections, hormone imbalance, immune dysregulation, and cellular dysfunction. So those are the 8 main reasons we get sick. That's a profoundly important slide. If you start to understand some of these mechanisms, you can understand where you're out of balance and how to get it back. And we'll elaborate on all of these. So that's what this series of talks is about. So this is the introduction. Okay. This is a useful diagram that just shows that point I was making. The exposome is the total combination of influences that we expose our genes to. So what I had for breakfast this morning, the kind of emotional stress I might be under or not under, my exercise, that constitutes the exposome. And the exposome is influencing genetic expression. So how we're living, our lifestyles are affecting which genes are on, which genes are off. It's profound. So we get to choose that. That relationship. And so if you take my blood now, the biochemistry that you analyze in my blood now is a combination, is a result of what's been happening with the environment I've been choosing over the last while and my genetics. Does that make sense? So the interaction between my average lifestyle choices and my genetics results in my biochemistry, or finds expression in my biochemistry. Does that make sense? So that's profound because it's both scary and empowering. We can use it in good ways. You're following me, you're all very silent. I hope I'm not scaring you. This is powerful stuff. Okay, so system check. I want to tell you, and I want, if the other thing I want you to walk away with from these seminars, hopefully, is a sense of awe and wonder. I want to tell you that your body is amazing. You're an amazing creation, and I believe you're created. And I know that many of you feel the same. We are atoms. As I'm standing here now, I'm a collection of carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, and nitrogen. Those are the 4 major elements that constitute our human bodies. And, that's amazing. We're a bunch of atoms, a collection of atoms. And now we even know there's subatomic particles, which I can't even pronounce sometimes. It gets infinitely complex. And those atoms come together, they make molecules. Those molecules make up cells. Those cells make up tissues. Those tissues make up organs. Organs make up systems. And systems make up you. Does that make sense? So it's helpful to understand how we constructed. What are our smallest units? What's the scale of ascendancy? And ultimately, how do we end up with you? So humans have a musculoskeletal system. They have muscles, they have bones. They have a gastrointestinal system, which is the digestive tract. They have an immune system. They have a hormonal system. They have a circulatory system. They have a nervous system. And their function is to provide a stable environment to adequately meet cellular requirements. Happy cells equals happy you. So if you're not well, it's because you're sick at a cellular level in some way. Does that make sense? So if you start to understand pathophysiology like that, I'm not feeling well, I've got a headache or something, there's something going on in the cell. So think about it. There's about 37.2 Don't forget the point 2. Trillion cells in the human body. And no, nobody counted that personally, no. It was methylation reactions, which we're going to talk about. I want you to understand methylation by the end of the 2 weeks and say, I'm maximizing my methylation today by my choices. It's a very important process. Methylation reactions occur 1 billion times per second in the human body. So it's kind of important to know what methylation is. And another important process that goes hand in hand with methylation is a process called sulfation. You need enough sulfur-containing amino acids in our body and sulfur-containing compounds. Where do you get sulfur in foods? Garlic and onions. So if you had one of those nice juices that Daryl made for us, I think there was lots of garlic in one of those. I think I smelt my own breath, which was rather concerning, you know. So then you know. So garlic and onions, sulfur-containing vegetables. Sulfur is extremely important for detoxification. It's an important compound. I like this slide. Gee, my plasma membrane looks great today. So this is a schematic of a cell. A cell has a number of organelles. That's the mitochondria we were talking about. That's the Golgi apparatus, which makes the various vesicles and stuff. That's the endoplasmic reticulum, I think it is. Is that what they say? So endoplasmic reticulum is where you assemble proteins, and that's the nucleus. So happy cell equals happy you. Unhappy cell equals unhappy you. So you want your cells to say, gee, my plasma membrane looks great today. And there's things that can help your cell to do that. So what does a cell need? We'll get back to that, but, well, a little bit. Water, oxygen, fuel, waste removal, low toxicity, low inflammation, antioxidant protection, materials for repair, nutrients for biochemistry production, rest, and hormonal balance. Those are some of the requirements that your cell has to work well. And remember that now the circulatory system is just trying to get those kind of nutrients to the cell. The liver's trying to detoxify so that the blood's clean enough to get the junk that's coming out of the cells and coming from the gut and sorting those things out. It's trying to control these parameters. It's fascinating, don't you think? Awesome. So tonight I promised, as per the flyer, to talk a little bit about respiratory health. And I don't want to bog you down to the details here, but this is really important. And I only recently became more aware of this myself, and I've been trying to practice it. How are you breathing right now? Are you thinking about it? How are we supposed to breathe? Through your nose. Yeah, absolutely. How many of us are breathing through our nose? Did you think about it? Okay, we're designed to be nose breathers. This thing is like, you know, remember the old days when you could still understand cars and actually work on them? I had an old cadet once, a red cadet. And I was more under the hood of that thing than I was behind the driver's seat, I think. But there were days, those were the days where you could actually open your bonnet and still see what they call an air filter. Remember the air filter? I don't know where the air filter is in my car now. I'd have to get a manual or something or take it to the dealer. But the nose is the air filter. This is not just a skeg, you know, an appendage on your face. It's actually a filter. So we need to understand this organ well and use it properly. So let's talk about the function of the nose. So this is what we call a sagittal section of the nose. It's got 3 bones called the turbinates, the superior, middle, and inferior turbinate bones. The tragedy is that many of us, through lifestyle choices, through injuries, through chronic allergies and infections, have become mouth breathers. So we don't use our noses. And we're going to see that it has a very important physiological function in our health. So I want you to become aware of how you're breathing. Think about how you're breathing. About 80% of the Western population breathes incorrectly. They engage in mouth breathing, which using the upper chest. So this kind of thing where my chest moves, you know, and having noticeable breathing during rest. The nose is the only organ able to properly prepare the air we breathe. Mouth breathing leads to overbreathing, chronic hyperventilation, depleted carbon dioxide levels, reduced blood circulation, and narrowing of the airways. Let me just try and make it simple. I've got quite a few slides here. When we nose breathe, we actually limit the amount of air that's moving outside of our airways. When you mouth breathe, you actually move in terms of volume up to 6 times more air than when you nose breathe. The consequence of that is that you're actually losing more carbon dioxide than you should be losing. The body has a vested interest in controlling your blood gases in very tight parameters. Carbon dioxide is one of those gases that's used to buffer the pH of the body and the blood. So carbon dioxide has to be kept within a certain narrow range. Carbon dioxide is not just a waste gas, it has important functions. So, because of the volume difference between nose breathing and mouth breathing, when you mouth breathe, you're blowing off too much carbon dioxide. So your brain habituates. If I tell you to hold your breath now, and we'll do this just now, just to do an exercise. If I tell you to hold your breath, why do you start to breathe again? Do you know? Anybody know? I know we have some health people in the audience that are just being modest and not giving the answer, I'm sure. So the reason you breathe, if I go, I'm not going to breathe anymore, I'm just going to stand here. The reason I have to breathe is because my carbon dioxide level is rising in my blood, because I'm still alive. My cells are still producing carbon dioxide. And that carbon dioxide actually diffuses into your brain, into the medulla. There's a respiratory center in the medulla, which is part of your brainstem. And when that carbon dioxide level rises, there's a reflex that happens is, I have to take a breath because my carbon dioxide level has risen. That's why if you are diving and trying to hold your breath, if you hyperventilate and blow off your CO2 like that, you lower your PCO2 in your blood, your partial pressure of carbon dioxide, your stimulus to breathe is a whole lot less. And that sounds like a good thing, but actually long term it's actually not a good thing, and we'll see that now. So one of the reasons to nose breathe and not mouth breathe is to control your CO2 level properly. When you blow off too much CO2, you actually can constrict your carotid artery by up to 50%. Did you know that? So you actually decrease brain perfusion by mouth breathing. So changing your CO2 levels to have chronically low CO2 levels has physiological implications in your body. It actually constricts your coronary arteries, so it decreases perfusion to your heart. It decreases perfusion to your brain. The other thing that nose breathing does, I'm giving you a summary of the following slides just to make it short and easy to digest. The other thing that nose breathing does is it releases a compound called nitric oxide. Everybody heard of nitric oxide? So in your nose, when you breathe through your nose, your body is actually producing small amounts of the gas called nitric oxide. And nitric oxide actually goes down into your airways and it causes bronchodilation, causes relaxation. So if you're asthmatic, you particularly want to breathe through your nose. Because when you're blowing off your CO2, you're not getting the nitric oxide, you're going to get bronchoconstriction. When you see people breathing into a brown paper bag, they're actually raising their CO2 level. That's what they're doing. They're breathing in and restoring CO2 level. And another important thing that's actually happening is that the molecule that carries oxygen in your blood is a molecule called hemoglobin. Everybody heard of hemoglobin? So it carries oxygen. There are certain factors that determine how well your hemoglobin delivers oxygen to your tissues. One of those factors is CO2. So the higher your CO2 goes, the more readily your hemoglobin releases oxygen at the tissue level. Okay, does that make sense? So if I'm mouth breathing, I'm blowing off my CO2, I'm getting it lower than it should be, I'm actually affecting tissue perfusion of oxygen. I'm getting a lower delivery of oxygen at my tissue level. So this might sound like a silly discussion to be having, but it's important to breathe through your nose and breathe properly through your nose. The other thing it does, so it does several things. It's got cilia there, little hairs. You know those things that you hate to pull when they get so long? Those things have an important function. They actually filter out particulate matter. They filter the air, making it clean of taking out the particles. It's not supposed to get to the lungs. It warms it, humidifies it. Cold air will tend to cause bronchoconstriction. So you've got a prepared, filtered, humidified air that's rich in nitric oxide coming into your lungs. That's what you want. Makes sense, eh? So you'll never look at your nose the same, even if it's ugly from the outside. It's got incredible functions. And breathing properly through it actually helps to restore balance between your sympathetic and your parasympathetic nervous system. That's fascinating. Those are the two divisions of your autonomic nervous system. I don't have to sit when I've had some vegetables now. I don't have to tell my stomach to make some stomach acid. make pancreatic enzymes. That's an automatic function. That's your autonomic nervous system. And breathing through your nose helps to increase parasympathetic balance, which is interesting. Signs of inefficient breathing. Mouth breathing, upper chest breathing, frequent sighing, noticeable breathing during rest, taking large breaths prior to talking, erratic breathing, chronic rhinitis. You get into a vicious cycle when you lose too much carbon dioxide. Your nose becomes stuffy, and getting your CO2 levels actually to the correct level helps to make your nose more patent. So you get into vicious cycles. So just while we're on this topic, with your mouth closed, breathe through your nose. And if you're going and you're struggling, there's a problem. You need to have patency of your nose. So you need to ask why. If that's the case, you need to say, do I have chronic rhinitis? Do I have an anatomical cause? Did someone punch me on the nose and break my septum and deviate it? So if you can't breathe through your nose, you need to see a doctor about making your nose patent. But breathing through your nose itself will help to restore patency to nasal breathing. It's a cycle you get into based on your CO2 levels. Some useful information. And you will see that when we talk about sleep, if you're not breathing through your nose at night, you're going to be a chainsaw person. Your spouse is going to keep digging you in the ribs because you're going to snore. You want to breathe through your nose at night. And how you breathe in the day will often translate into how you breathe at night. And one of the causes for poor quality sleep is disturbed breathing. You've all heard of obstructive sleep apnea. So if you're not having a good night's sleep, there can be brain causes, and there can be physical causes, like anatomical causes, like obstructive sleep apnea, which itself is divided into two separate types. But the point is, you need to be breathing properly at night. We've discussed that. The Tarahumara people, I didn't even know there was such a people, but they are, in Mexico. They're known for running up to 62 miles a day into their 60s. And they found that one of the things they do is to breathe through their nose. So that those of you that exercise regularly, and I hope that's going to be all of us by the end of the 2 weeks, how are you breathing when you're exercising? I want to challenge you. This is where it gets hard. Where's Peter? Yeah, we've spoken about this before. How are you breathing when you exercise? Most of us run down the road and go, and we're out of breath, and what we're doing then? We're actually blowing off more CO2. So what we're training up, what we're entrenching, is we're entrenching the brain to be used to a low level of CO2. So now we're going to do an experiment, because you're all half asleep. Your CO2 is getting too high. So we're going to do an experiment. We're going to do a little thing, try and work out what your control pause time is. So I'm first going to describe what to do, and then you're going to do it. All right? And please listen carefully so that you do it correctly. What you do is you breathe normally in and out through your nose. And you'll be amazed how nasal breathing actually calms you down. Mouth breathing makes you hyperventilate and makes you more anxious. Did you know that? So you must nose breathe when you're anxious, especially, but always. So just nose breathe. And if you can't, there's the blockage, then you need to sort that out. So once you've had a few cycles of nose breathing, on the exhalation, when you've breathed out, when you've exhaled the gas, now nobody collapse on me, please. I want you to just pinch your nose lightly. Pinch it with your hand opposite to your watch if you have a watch. And you've breathed out now on the exhalation. And I want you to time how long it is before you have to take a breath. Now, don't go purple. Don't pass out. But don't start yet, just so you understand what we're doing here. You need to be getting the number of seconds it takes for your brain to say, listen, you need to breathe. But resist it as long as possible, because your time's going to determine how fit you actually are. Okay? So, try this. Armand, you're also trying it. Okay, so let's do it. So you breathe in and out slowly, not big things, just normal breathing. Once you've exhaled a normal amount, not all the way out, normal amount, just Okay, so you breathe out, you pinch your nose, and you time in seconds before you absolutely have to breathe again. Now don't try and win the contest and pass out. Before you absolutely have to breathe again, work out what that time period is. It will take a few seconds for you to do that. I'll see who the winner is here, but don't pass out. And be honest. You haven't held your breath, eh? You're not holding your breath. You must have let the breath out. It's on exhalation. Gee, you guys are fit. All nose breathers here. That's impressive. How do we do? Any 10 seconds? Most of us are going to be 20 to 40. Yeah. And basically what that indicates is your tolerance of a rising carbon dioxide level, which by proxy is indicative, can be indicative of how much you're nose breathing versus mouth breathing. Because we said that if you're mouth breathing, you're blowing off your carbon dioxide, you're keeping it low so that your brain doesn't tolerate a rising level of CO2. Does that make sense? So the more fit you are, the higher your CP time is, or the more you've been nose breathing. Does that make sense? Okay. You with me? You enjoying this? Is it fun, I hope? All right. Okay, so you want to get your CP time up. And if you're under 10 seconds, we need to talk afterwards. Okay, so how you breathe at rest typically translates to how you breathe when you exercise. Over-breathing during exercise causes your CO2 levels to drop, we said, which reduces blood flow to your heart and increases your risk of cardiac arrhythmias. Sudden cardiac death in athletes that look otherwise fit can also be related to how they've been breathing. So, I want to give you a performance tip here in athletics and sport. Force yourself to train breathing through your nose only. So, yeah, put duct tape over your mouth if you have to, but stop. Stop before you pass. Don't put duct tape over your mouth, please. So, when you go for a jog, try it. How you've been breathing habitually at rest will often translate into how you breathe during exercise. Okay? So, I've tried this, and it develops with a thing called air hunger. Now, you feel like, because you know, I can't get enough air going through my nose, and that's normal. But what you must try and do is, because you're trying to increase your CO2 tolerance, you're trying to train your brain to tolerate a higher level of carbon dioxide. That's what you're trying to do. So within reason, don't pass out and all die on me now, please. Within reason, stretch that period of discomfort so that you habitually train your brain to tolerate more carbon dioxide level. And you will start outperforming slowly over time the people that you might ride with or race with or run with or whatever, if they're mouth breathing. Because you're going to tolerate higher and higher levels of carbon dioxide. That's the point. Does that make sense? So if you want to increase so how you breathe at rest must be how you breathe at night, must be how you breathe in exercise. And if you're training and you're trying to increase your fitness, just push yourself and stretch yourself and do it to the point. You're going to develop air hunger. It's going to feel like really uncomfortable. You have to breathe. You're not moving enough volume of gases. And these guys, these Mexicans we were reading about, apparently they were breathing a little bit out through their mouth, but they were breathing in through their nose. And the way to develop it is you can perhaps start simply by occluding one nostril, walk around a room, and get used to air hunger. You know, that's just the way to train it. But interesting thoughts. It's fascinating, isn't it? Don't you think things you take for granted, breathing properly, is one of the first rules of health. Breathe through your nose, and breathe in and out through your nose if you can. If you have to when you're exercising, you can breathe a little bit out through your mouth, but you want to at least be breathing in through your nose. Try and stick to as much in and out through your nose as possible. Diaphragmatic breathing, if you're battling to sleep at night. You know the diaphragm. Everybody know the diaphragm. The diaphragm is a big dome-shaped muscular sheet that sits between your thorax and your abdomen. It's supplied by a nerve called the phrenic nerve, which comes from the cervical spine. And basically it just moves down. And the lungs don't have muscle. You know that. Your lungs don't have muscle. The reason they expand is why? Why do they expand? Because you've got movement of muscle acting on a vacuum. The lungs are sitting in a vacuum. So when your diaphragm goes down, it's sucking on it, it's creating a pressure change in the pleural space, and thereby drawing air into that space because you're changing the volume of the lungs. Does that make sense? So you want to be practicing nasal diaphragmatic breathing. That's the kind of breathing you want to be doing. I remember we used to sing in the choir many years ago, and the guy that used to lead our choir always used to tell us how to breathe properly. Breathe with your diaphragm, abdominal diaphragmatic breathing. And so practice nasal diaphragmatic breathing. And if you're not sleeping at night, if you're battling to fall asleep, you lie there on your bed, and you're going to be doing nasal diaphragmatic breathing. Take slow breaths in, count to 5, breathe out slowly through your nose preferably, not your mouth, but using your diaphragm for the inspiration. Breathe out over 5, 7, 8 seconds. Breathe in over 5 seconds. Breathe out over 5 or 8 seconds, diaphragmatically. You'll soon be asleep. It's very good. Try it. So yeah, breathing well. We'll skip all of that. In summary, to finish off tonight, we were made to be physically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually whole. I like this quote. Grace is the power of the omnipotent to grant to the impotent the ability to be whole. That's a powerful statement. Sometimes we need a lot of help outside of ourselves, and I believe that help is there. And that's a last statement to remember. True healthcare must of necessity focus on the whole person. We are an integrated whole. If we would be truly well, we must of necessity be physically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually so. So I want to challenge you tonight, in a few closing thoughts. Think about where you're at with your health. How well do you feel? On these parameters, where do you need to grow? Where can you improve? Because that's what we're made for. We're made to be really, really well. And I want that for myself. I want that for the people I work with. That's what life's about, is to be well on these levels. I don't want anything less. I'm sure you don't either. So physical well-being will be the focus of these talks. So I want to really encourage you to come. I'm hoping you're going to learn a lot. We're going to be going into now some of the systems and how they cause disease. And when you understand that and what to do to prevent that, you can create the foundations for true wellness. Mental, emotional well-being is vital to address. Negative self-limiting beliefs. I want to talk a bit about that. If we want to be mentally and emotionally well, we have a lot of self-talk that goes on in our heads, don't we? We have a lot of stuff that isn't true that we sometimes hold on to and believe. And we need to, I call these, from my readings, negative SLBs. Negative self-limiting beliefs. I want you to think about your mental and emotional well-being tonight. How many negative self-beliefs do you hold that might be working against you? And they're not often, or let me just say, they're often not conscious. You can often be deciding something and doing something, and when you stop to confront the belief behind that, it's often a negative belief. So I want you to look at your life, your mental, emotional well-being. Are there any ants in your head? Automatic negative thoughts. Automatic negative thoughts. We learn ways of thinking. We all come from families. None of our families are perfect. We learn negative ways of thinking, negative ways of reacting to the world. If you want to be mentally and emotionally well, you need to think, well, what is my thought life like? There's a passage in the Bible actually that says, as a man thinketh in his heart, so is he. As a man thinketh, so is he. Hey, that speaks to me. I've realized, looking at my life, that there's often very many negative thoughts going on, negative beliefs. We want to be well, we need to confront those things. We need to say, is what I'm thinking and believing, or is my action, the action that I'm taking now, what belief does it reveal? And is that belief true? And if it's not true, we need to get rid of it if we want to be well. So think about your thought life. It's important. Spiritual well-being. Who are we? How did we get here? How should we live? What is our purpose? I believe, it's my belief, wholeness is God's intent and gift for us. We must pursue it. These are some important questions. We can't do life well if we don't even know why we're here. If we don't even know what it's all about. So we need to answer some of the deeper questions of life to have real well-being sometimes. When we start to understand our origins, our purpose, we can be in a better place to get out of life what I believe we're supposed to have. And trust me, I'm not saying this as one who's arrived in any shape or form. I'm saying this as a learner. These are things I'm trying to apply in my own life. And I want to encourage you to do the same. Tonight's take home, we were made for more, for abundance, vitality, joy, and life. If you're not having that, I want to challenge you to keep coming and saying, I'm giving myself that gift. I'm going to have the courage to do what it takes to give myself the kind of joy and life and vitality that I'm supposed to have. I'm going to have the courage to confront the things that are keeping me from that. Wellness is not the absence of negative symptoms, but it is the presence of positives, physically, mentally, emotionally, socially, and spiritually. How well are you? Where might you not be in harmony with the laws of your constitution? What do you want for the rest of the journey? What do you want? What do you want for the rest of your journey? This is that intentional living we were talking about. What do I want? If I don't know what I want, I'm not going to get there. Definitely not. What might be the barriers in your journey to optimal wellness? Are they physical, emotional, relational, spiritual? Think about your breathing and train yourself to engage in nasal breathing at rest, at night, and during exercise. Set goals for what you want for your health from here out. That's the next lecture. It's not about my cause. All right, I hope that was helpful, just as an introduction. Thanks for coming tonight. I don't know if we need question and answers tonight. Do we need some question and answers? Or we didn't really discuss too much medical tonight. Sure.